The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, December 19th, 2025. Your reader for this hour is Chet Walczyk. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. This is the weekend edition. We'll kick it off with the opening section and their feature story. A little lightness to get us going here. Move over, Santa. Mrs. Claus is coming to town and America. Dateline, Fort Worth, Texas. Sleigh bells ring, and a few dozen twinkly-eyed seniors are listening. Mrs. Claus is in the house, and she has got a major bulletin to share. I have come from the North Pole to deliver some very exciting news, she tells those gathered at Haltom City Senior Center in suburban Fort Worth on a chilly December day. The big announcement is, you are all on the nice list. The elders, many of them in winter pajamas, shout out with glee. Santa, however, is nowhere to be seen. It's just Mrs. Claus, also known as Betsy Modziewski of Keller, Texas, at the controls in a satiny red outfit with white faux fur cuffs, cultivating smiles and memories with caroling and a reading of The Night Before Christmas. It is a change of pace, said Joyce Hale, 68, a community senior who is seeing Modziewski's act for the third straight year. She's got a great personality. Don't look now, but here comes Mrs. Claus. Right down Santa Claus Lane. Though St. Nick might be the season's marquee draw, Modziewski and others say Mrs. Claus' popularity is on the rise as clients look to break from routine, enlist the character's motherly qualities, and highlight positive female role models. Though there's no central registry of Mrs. Clauses, hundreds likely exist nationwide with membership in organizations like the Worldwide Santa Claus Network and the International Brotherhood of Real Bearded Santas, now open to women. Meanwhile, the esteemed Charles W. Howard Santa School in Midland, Michigan, has seen Mrs. Claus enrollment climb from just 10 2 decades ago to 75 this year. Quite honestly, we are not the first thing people think of, said Trish Wisniewski of Dallas, who's enjoying no shortage of gigs in her fourth season in the role. But once a person hires a Mrs. Claus, they realize the value of having a Mrs. Claus. So in demand is Mrs. Claus that Wisniewski only has 3 days without a gig between mid-November and January. I have been turning jobs down, she said. But who is Mrs. Claus? Though certain qualities such as a jolly disposition, beard, and chubby frame are associated with Santa, few details are linked to Mrs. Claus, despite her first mention, according to the Women's Museum of California, in James Reese' 1849 short story, A Christmas Legend. That's one reason many performers say they're drawn to Mrs. Claus. Her relative obscurity offers a freer canvas. There are certain expectations from Santa that makes them more similar, but there's a huge range of Mrs. Clauses, said Wisniewski, 70, who retired after managing child care actors in the Los Angeles entertainment industry. There is no right or wrong, only that you have to love children, have the true spirit of Christmas in your heart, and want to make memories that last a lifetime. Outside of that, you can be anyone you want to be. In Atlanta, for instance, Aretha Mobley performs as Mrs. Granny Claus. I am the mother of Santa and a cheerleader for Mrs. Claus, said Mobley, 63. The kids ask, where is Santa? And I say, Santa is home resting until Christmas Eve. A victim witness specialist for the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Northern District of Georgia, Mobley adopted the persona to tap her experience in dealing with troubled children. There is some wisdom in Grandma, and children love to be cuddled, she said. Grandma can hug you and make things better. In Huntsville, Alabama, Ayla Hamilton, known as that Filipina Mrs. Claus, Ayla Kringle, said her Mrs. Claus reflects her Filipina heritage, warm, hospitable, and bubbly. We like to have fun, she said. We don't know a stranger. But while plenty of Mrs. Clauses still appear alongside Santas, some are increasingly carrying the show. Modzieski, 49, said about 60% of her appearances this season have been solo. Mrs. Claus is strong, she said. She runs the North Pole. A lot of families want that kind of example for their girls. And Hamilton agreed. A lot of people want to put Mrs. Claus in a box and say, well, she just bakes cookies, said Hamilton, 48. My Mrs. Claus is basically queen of the North Pole. For parents hosting home parties, there's other reasons to conscript Mrs. Claus. She can entertain children waiting in line to take pictures with Santa, soothe the fears of little ones afraid of St. Nick, or lighten the load for busy hostesses by engaging kids with games. If Mrs. Claus isn't there, then it's going to be on the hostess to occupy the children, Wisniewski said. We make the hostess's job easier. Wisniewski, who performs as Mrs. Claus the Evergreen Queen, doesn't want to pooh-pooh what Santas do or downplay Mrs. Claus' supporting role. But while some Santas sing or do magic, she said, a lot of them don't. They just show up and act jolly and take pictures. Typically, Mrs. Clauses bring a little bit more to the table. We sing or make cookies. We can do a craft night party for little girls. There is no limit. In addition to senior centers, Mrs. Clauses appear at preschools, daycare facilities, retail stores, charity events, and corporate fests complete with elves, Dickens carolers, and actual reindeer. Modzieski, who was in her church's director of children's ministry and markets herself as the spirited Mrs. Claus, has juggled stints at elementary schools and rehab centers with tree lightings, fundraisers, and even podcast interviews done totally in character. She's now in her third season. Her kit includes puppets, a jar of reindeer hair, and authentic sleigh bells. Mrs. Clauses strive to be as professionally prepared as their Santa counterparts, and as part of her training, Modzieski visited reindeer herders in Michigan so she could answer children's questions about the animals. Mrs. Clauses and Santas who perform together typically confer beforehand to iron out the details of their backstory in case kids ask questions about how they met or how long they've been married. Hamilton tells audiences that as Santa was making his global gift rounds, he stopped for a break at a bake shop in the Philippines and was love at first sight. That's how I became Mrs. Claus, she said. We're always consistent with our stories. Performers say it's also important to get to know each other to ease interaction in front of audiences. The one thing that we stress at Santa School is that Santa and Mrs. Claus should be an example of love for each other, said Holly Vallant, a Mrs. Claus performer and president of the Charles W. Howard Santa Claus School. Children don't always see a loving and respectful relationship between couples or even their mother and father. Still, working with Santa means treading a fine line. When Santa and I are together, I know not to overshadow him, said Hamilton, whose husband Craig plays Santa and elevates his Mrs. Claus. If event hosts have set up a seat for Santa, for instance, he will make sure there's one for her too. Wisniewski said that when she and Santa step in front of an audience, she not only reads the room, but her counterpart as well. With Santas who embrace the limelight, she'll hold back until beckoned. Other Santas don't care to interact much with her at all. Santa is the star, Wisniewski said. I'm there to make him look good, but it's also a partnership. I have Santas I work with who are more timid. They love it when I take control. But I am never going to overstep my role as Mrs. Claus. I want to work with that Santa again, and we are there to make sure the guests have a good experience. In Huntsville, Hamilton embraced her role as Mrs. Claus when husband Craig began performing as Santa 2 years ago to honor a late friend's legacy. It seemed only natural for both. They're the kind of couple who put Christmas trees in every room in the house, and since then, it has become more than just a seasonal pastime. We made a lifestyle change when we did this, she said. Everything in our closet is red, green, and gold. Every pair of shoes I have is classified. We listen to Christmas music year-round. This is not something we do just in the month of December. Their son and daughter often perform with them. Shepard, 18, plays Jack Frost, and Marion, 16, is the Sugar Plum Fairy. The family has an entire room dedicated to costumes and makeup, dubbed the Claus-ette. That's right. You didn't expect Mrs. Claus to have just one dress, did you? As with Santa, Mrs. Claus's outfits and repertoires are as varied as their audiences, from vintage store period pieces to formal dresses crafted by seamstresses. Mobley, Mrs. Granny Claus, dons a mix of velvets or satins, cotton if she's going to be interacting with kids, and a Scottish print if she'll be reading to a crowd. She also has a round white fur hat accented with a fashion pin if she's looking to make a statement. Before her senior center appearance, Modziewski notes that her dress cuffs and collar are detachable so she can remove them before washing. That's something I learned from the Santa, she said. Obviously, otherwise they'll turn pink. Modziewski wraps up her senior center appearance with a carol sing-along, then poses for photos with a stream of elders suddenly revisiting their youths, listening as they share holiday memories and details about their grandchildren. She just brings so much joy, said Center Supervisor Bobby Arthur. Modziewski's work is done. In a flash of red, Mrs. Claus picks up her feet and disappears into the frosty air until next year. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12 minutes after the hour. On a more somber note, air traffic control Army crew failed in crash. Government admits liability in fatal collision. The U.S. government admitted the role Army pilots and air traffic controllers played in the deadly collision involving a military helicopter and a passenger jet that killed 67 people near Washington, D.C. earlier this year, according to court documents filed on December 17th. The government's admission of liability came in response to a wrongful death lawsuit filed by the widow of Casey Crafton, one of the victims killed in the crash. The lawsuit blamed the government, American Airlines, and its partner, PSA Airlines, for their roles in the January 29th collision. In a 209-page court filing, the government said it is among the defendants liable for the damages from the crash. The filing states that the U.S. Army flight crew failed to adequately operate the helicopter at a safe distance and that Federal Aviation Administration air traffic controllers did not properly follow FAA procedures. According to the filing, the Army pilot's failure to maintain vigilance so as to see and avoid the commercial airliner makes the government liable for damages in the wrongful death lawsuit. American Airlines Flight 5342 was about to land at the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport on the evening of January 29 when it collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter which had been conducting a training mission. Both aircraft plummeted into the Potomac River, killing 64 people on board the plane and 3 people on the helicopter. The crash victims included members of the U.S. figure skating community and families who were returning from a competition in Wichita, Kansas. The collision was the first fatal crash of a commercial plane in the United States since 2009 and raised concerns over the country's aging air traffic control system and aviation safety. You may ask, what does the wrongful death lawsuit claim? Well, The lawsuit, filed in U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia on September 24th, claimed that the airlines involved in the crash should have known the risks of flying International Airport. The airport had previously been considered one of the most dangerous in the country due to the high volume of military air traffic in the area. The defendants were required to exercise vigilance when operating and or controlling aircraft in the vicinity of Reagan National Airport. These defendants, however, utterly failed in their responsibilities to the traveling public, the lawsuit states. The complaint alleges the airlines manipulated and abused the arrival rate system at the airport to force in more of their arrivals per hour at the airport, despite its knowledge that doing so severely limited the margins for safety. The lawsuit also claimed that the Army flight crew failed to operate the helicopter at or below the mandatory altitude, and that the FAA's air traffic controllers failed to separate the aircraft in the airspace and issue safety alerts when aircraft were in an unsafe proximity. At the time of the incident, the Army helicopter was flying above maximum altitude levels and not broadcasting an automatic dependent surveillance broadcast system. A preliminary report from the National Transportation Safety Board suggested that thousands of close calls involving helicopters and commercial airplanes occurred in the same area near National Airport from 2021 to 2024. The Safety Board's investigation into the crash remains ongoing. Since the incident, the agency has held a series of hearings on the matter. After the collision, the FAA has set procedures to restrict mixed traffic of helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft near the airport and eliminated the use of visual separation within 5 miles of the airport, among other measures. In May, the FAA barred the Army from helicopter flights around the Pentagon after another close call that forced 2 civilian planes to abort landings. Steep Medicare drug discounts start January 1st. Medicare drug price negotiations, kickstarted by the Biden administration, will finally result in lower drug prices for seniors beginning January 1st under actions taken by President Trump. The Medicare negotiated price cuts will apply to 10 drugs prescribed to treat cancer, heart disease, autoimmune conditions, and diabetes. The drugs that will be discounted are Eliquis, Jardiance, Xarelto, Januvia, Farxiga, Entresto, Enbrel, Imbruvica, Stelara, and Novolog. Again, those drugs are Eliquis, Jardiance, Xarelto, Januvia, Farxiga, Entresto, Enbrel, Imbruvica, Stelara, and Novolog. Medicare enrollees will save an average of more than 50% on out-of-pocket costs for these drugs under their insurance plans, according to an AARP analysis published December 18th. 7 of the 10 drugs will cost less than $100 per month. The analysis examined standalone Medicare prescription drug insurance plans in 5 states, but AARP officials said the results are representative of what consumers will see nationwide. About 9 million Americans use the 10 drugs, and the discounted prices will save consumers an estimated $1.5 billion in 2026, according to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. With the nation's attention focused on affordability and rising living costs, any source of savings is really important, said Lee Purvis, AARP's prescription drug policy principal. It is a big, meaningful improvement in a world where everything costs a lot at the moment. Under former President Biden's 2022 climate and health legislation, called the Inflation Reduction Act, Medicare was empowered to negotiate prices with pharmaceutical companies on a limited number of medications. Medicare picked the first batch of 10 drugs and announced discounts to be rolled out in January. President Trump and congressional Republicans' tax cut and spending legislation, called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, stripped some climate and clean energy tax credits. The Trump administration has seemingly embraced the Medicare drug price negotiations enabled under the Inflation Reduction Act. In November, Medicare announced discounts on another 15 drugs, including the blockbuster diabetes and weight loss drugs Ozempic and Wegovy, beginning in January 2027. In early 2026, Medicare will pick another batch of drugs to negotiate a third round of discounts to be implemented in 2028. Under President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, some drugs might be delayed or excluded from negotiations, health policy nonprofit KFF reported, citing the cancer drugs Keytruda and Opdivo as examples, even though they are widely used by Medicare patients. Trump has already announced deals with several pharmaceutical companies to sell other discounted medications to federal health programs or Trump RX, his administration's direct-to-consumer website, expected to launch in early 2026. During his televised address on December 17th, Trump touted his administration's efforts to lower drug prices. I negotiated directly with the drug companies and foreign nations, which were taking advantage of our country for many decades, to slash prices on drugs and pharmaceuticals by as much as 400, 500, and even 600%, said Trump, who added he used the threat of tariffs to extract lower drug prices. Drug prices that are discounted 100% or more would make the medicines free, and that hasn't happened yet. However, the president has pressured drug makers to lower their prices to what patients pay in other nations, a concept known as most favored nation pricing. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time comes in at 23 minutes after the hour. How about that? Defense bill contains pay raise for troops. How about time? Just before lawmakers head home for the holidays, they passed a 3.8% pay raise for all military service members. The wage increase, effective January 1st, was one of several key provisions in Congress's annual must-pass defense policy bill, approved by the Senate on December 17th. The $900 billion bill, approved with a 77-20 vote, provides funding to widely bolster military infrastructure. That includes allocating hundreds of millions of dollars to the construction of new dining facilities, schools, and child care centers for service members' families, and renovating military hospitals. It also grants the Lumbee Tribe in North Carolina official federal regulation and recognition after a years-long fight. The legislation, known as the National Defense Authorization Act, garnered bipartisan support. Senate Majority Leader John Thune of South Dakota called the wage hike for service members well-deserved. This year's Defense Act builds on the historic investments that Republicans delivered in the One Big Beautiful Bill to support our service members and ensure our country has the fighting force necessary to deter our adversaries and promote peace and stability, he said in a statement. I am glad we were able to get it across the finish line. Some prominent lawmakers weren't happy with it. Washington Senator Patty Murray, the top Democrat in the Senate in charge of appropriations, voted against the bill, saying it does not go far enough to curb the Trump administration's recent military actions in Venezuela, which she called lawless. She also opposed the exclusion of a provision to expand health care coverage for in vitro fertilization, or IVF, treatment to service members. The politicization and weaponization of our military under this administration should alarm and frighten us all, she said in a statement. Here are three other components that stand out in the sprawling legislation. First, notably, the bill includes punitive measures for the Pentagon if it declines to show members of Congress the unedited footage of lethal strikes on suspected drug trafficking vessels in the Caribbean in September. One of the military operations, which killed 11 people, has drawn bipartisan scrutiny after some lawmakers and international law experts said a decision to lethally shoot at survivors amounted to a war crime. The defense bill threatens to cut a quarter of the travel budget for Secretary of War Pete Hegseth if the full video of the September 2nd operation isn't shown to lawmakers. Number two, the defense bill also includes a measure allowing the military to exempt some helicopters in the District of Columbia from warning nearby airplanes about their precise operating location. It was exactly that type of carve-out that contributed to the crowded airspace that caused the fatal crash near Reagan National Airport in January, claiming 67 lives, according to Senator Ted Cruz. Cruz and Senator Maria Cantwell, Democrat of Washington, pledged to push in a bipartisan way to reverse the waiver, which critics have characterized as a safety loophole. That effort is underway. The Senate unanimously passed a separate bipartisan safety bill December 17th to undo the defense bill provision and improve airspace safety. And number three, members of the Lumbee tribe in North Carolina flooded the U.S. Capitol on December 17th amid the passage of the defense bill. It granted the tribe official federal recognition after a years-long fight, opening the door to millions of dollars in Native American programs. Other tribal nations have criticized the Lumbee tribe for refusing to go through the Interior Department's typical application process for federal recognition. President Trump, however, has been a vocal supporter of the Lumbee tribe's efforts. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and we move over to the opinion section for Friday, December 19th. And we have a piece written by Dr. Vinay Saranga. Dr. Saranga is an MD, a board-certified psychiatrist treating adults, adolescents, and children. And the doctor's piece comes under the title, "It's Okay Not to Be Okay During the Holidays." It is the winter holiday season, and our cultural messages are unrelenting. Commercials show happy families gathered around dinner tables. Carols fill the air with cheer, and social media overflows with perfect snapshots of celebrations and togetherness. Despite all the joy, laughter, and togetherness, for many people, this season tells a very different story. Behind the glow of twinkling lights and festive music, countless individuals quietly struggle with feelings of loneliness, sadness, and emotional exhaustion. As a psychiatrist, I see this contrast every year. The pressure to feel merry often magnifies the very emotions people wish they could escape. Ironically, loneliness can feel sharpest when we are surrounded by people. The holidays tend to emphasize connection, family, and belonging. So if someone feels disconnected or left out, that absence becomes painfully pronounced. For people who have lost loved ones, who are estranged from family, or who simply don't have a strong social network, the holidays can serve as an emotional mirror reflecting what is missing. Even those who do spend time with friends and family can still feel alone. Many describe feeling out of sync with the spirit of the season, going through the motions of parties and gatherings without really feeling present. This internal dissonance of wanting to be joyful but not feeling it can deepen a sense of isolation. Loneliness is not just an emotion. It's a human condition that impacts both mental and physical health. Studies have linked chronic loneliness to depression, anxiety, sleep issues, and even heart disease. During the holidays, when expectations of happiness are sky high, those feelings can intensify. Another side of holiday stress comes from the sheer business of it all. Between shopping, decorating, traveling, and attending events, the season can feel like a marathon of obligations. Many people, particularly parents or caregivers, feel immense pressure to create a perfect holiday experience for everyone else, often at the expense of their own well-being. Financial strain is another silent stressor. The pressure to buy gifts, host gatherings, or travel can push many into debt or anxiety. Others may struggle with complicated family dynamics, strained relationships, or painful memories that resurrect and resurface this time of year. And then you add alcohol, fatigue, and a disrupted routine into the mix. It's no wonder so many people describe feeling more stressed than serene. In my practice, I often remind patients that being emotionally overwhelmed, it's not a personal failure. It's a signal. The human brain and body are not wired to sustain constant pressure or expectation. Acknowledging that the season feels hard doesn't mean you are being negative. It means you are being honest. One of the most damaging myths about the holidays is that we are supposed to feel happy. The truth is that emotions don't follow the calendar. You can appreciate the season's meaning while still struggling with sadness, anxiety, or grief. And yes, that is perfectly okay. If you find yourself feeling persistently down, lonely, or irritable, or if you've lost interest in activities that usually bring joy, it may be a sign to reach out for help. Speaking with a mental health professional does not mean something is wrong with you. It's a healthy and courageous step toward understanding what you're experiencing and learning how to navigate it. Even small acts of self-care can make a difference. Setting realistic expectations, saying no when you need to, getting enough sleep, limiting alcohol, and carving out quiet times amid the chaos. Try to focus on connection rather than perfection. Sometimes that can mean spending time with one supportive person instead of attending a crowded party. The holidays can bring out both the best and the worst in us. They remind us of love and belonging, but they can also magnify loss and longing. The best gift we can give ourselves and others this season is compassion. If you are struggling, know that you are not alone and that your feelings are valid. And if you know someone who seems distant, withdrawn, or unusually quiet, a simple check-in can make a world of difference. Sometimes the smallest gesture, like a text, a call, or a warm invitation, can remind someone that they matter. This season, let's redefine what it means to celebrate. Let's allow space for both joy and grief, connection and solitude, laughter and tears. Because the holidays don't have to be perfect to be meaningful. They just have to be real. Boy, that was a wonderful piece. That really touched me and hit hard in a lot of ways. So hopefully you shared the same. But we move on to the money section for Friday, December 19th. And as I say every time we come on this section, I don't know why USA Today calls it the money section anymore. It's all about travel and tourism. So hopefully that's right up your alley, because that's what I'm going to give you. Cruising altitude, a column written by Zach Winter, USA Today travel editor. 5 tips for surviving flights with children. Holiday travel is stressful for everyone. Whether you have a whole family in tow or navigating the airport by yourself, you're bound to encounter obstacles and more than likely annoyances. As frustrating as it can be to encounter slowpokes at the security line or screaming children on your flight, everyone who travels over the next few weeks is in it together. But remember, kindness is the key to a happy holiday season. As an adult, presumably you're an adult reading this or hearing this, you have better control over your emotions than a toddler. Don't let it get to you if there's a crying baby on your flight. You probably did that once too. Having traveled with babies and toddlers, I believe that parents have way more to do. Getting ready for a trip is nerve-wracking enough. Baby Can Travel blog founder Celine Brewer previously told me. I don't believe that other adults on the plane should have this expectation that they're being inconvenienced by sharing this space with a baby. She added that if you're an experienced family traveler, it's nice to offer support to new parents if they seem to be having a hard time. When you become a pro at flying, make sure you offer that reassuring smile to a new parent, Brewer said. To get you ready for your own holiday air adventures, I spoke to Brittany Thompson. She has been a flight attendant at a major airline for 12 years and has a 4-year-old kid of her own. We chatted about her top tips for stress-free travel from both sides of the beverage cart. And here's her top 5. Number 1, bring the car seat. Thompson didn't hesitate with this first tip. Always travel with a car seat if your kid still uses one at home. My son is most comfortable when he is familiar with his surroundings, so he prefers it when we take his car seat on the airplane, Thompson said. The one time we did not take his car seat, he was like, "Mommy, this isn't comfortable. I want my car seat." There's a good safety reason for bringing the car seat as well. While Federal Aviation Administration regulations allow parents to hold their young children in their own laps while flying, it's not always a secure way of doing things if you encounter severe turbulence. Plus, Thompson said, kids, well, guess what? They know that the car seat means buckling up and staying relatively still. Number 2, don't limit screen time. Your seat neighbors will thank you for this one. Even if you have a limited screen time policy on the ground, keeping your kids distracted in the air may require different rules. He never gets a whole lot of screen time at home, but when we are on an airplane, he is carte blanche with that tablet, Thompson said. But, she was quick to add, you have to teach your kids proper device etiquette early. Headphones, tablets are the best for kids on airplanes, and if you don't have headphones, it just sort of ruins the experience, Thompson said. You will have that one family with 3 kids, and all 3 kids are playing Peppa Pig at volume, and that's not just annoying for the other passengers around you, it could lead the flight attendants to make you turn the devices off, and then your kids will really be upset. Number 3, pack toys and snacks. While screen time may be a great distraction on its own, especially on longer flights, kids may get peckish and want other things to do. We bring all the snacks, Thompson said. I have seen snackle boxes. They look like little fishing lure boxes, but they are filled with 12 different kinds of snacks, and that can make snack time a mini game of its own. She also said it can be extra exciting for your little one if you bring them something new to play with just for the trip. A lot of parents will bring their favorite toys and that's great. But nothing's better than something they haven't seen before. Even something like a new sticker book can be an exciting distraction. Just make sure the stickers don't wind up staying on the plane. Number 4, check your bags. No one wants to wait at baggage claim at the end of a long flight, but Thompson said it's sometimes the best option for a stress-free trip. I know a lot of times it's hard to do this. A lot of parents try to do it as cheaply as they can, so they don't want to check any bags. I totally get that. We are carry-on people too. But there comes a point when you've got to check in and check a bag, she said. You're way less stressed when you can walk on the airplane and don't have to find overhead bin space. Less stressed parents make for less stressed kids and a smoother, happier trip for everyone. Babies can read your energy as well. Try not to stress about the other people on the plane. Try to focus on your baby, Brewer told me. Plus, Thompson pointed out, even if you find overhead bin space, it's just easier to board and leave the plane when you're not lugging a whole week's worth of family luggage down the narrow aisle with you. And lastly, maybe, and here's a good idea, don't travel in the first place. This may sound counterintuitive coming from a flight attendant, but if you are planning to go over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house this year, Thompson said, you may be doing it wrong. Guilt the grandparents into traveling instead of you. If you can do that, that's great. It's a lot easier for them to travel than it is for you to pick up all the kids and all their things, she said. And finally, Thompson and I both agree that if you're an adult traveling without kids this winter, you shouldn't complain if a little one on your flight is having a bad day. Those kids are just screaming because all of us want to scream, and that's the only way they know how to communicate, Thompson said. I always have all the sympathy for the parents and none of the sympathy for whining adults. And with that, Cruising Altitude is going on winter recess. Happy holidays and see you in the skies in 2026. And we continue as you are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 43 minutes after the hour. And we continue with the travel and tourism section. The travel trend turning vacations into the ultimate relationship exam. There you go. The turbulence test. This is written by Kathleen Wong, another USA Today travel editor. Dan Lidwin loves a good adventure, and whomever he married would have had to feel the same way. So, in 2021, after a few months of dating, he put a burgeoning relationship to the test. A well-seasoned traveler, Lidwin has visited more than 80 countries, seeking out active experiences such as scuba diving and hiking. On a trip to Ecuador with his friends, the public relations professional went on a solo side quest, renting a car and going to the middle of the Colombian jungle for a bird safari. Naturally, when it came to love, Lidwin knew he needed someone who could keep up. And guess what? Then he met Sydney. The two crossed paths volunteering for the same service organization and started dating in March 2021. Her love for travel caught his eyes. She'd been to around 30 countries herself, and she was a daredevil in her own right. She ran marathons and took trips, such as hiking the Grand Canyon rim to rim in a single day. I knew she had a zest for adventure, Lidwin said. In the first few months of their relationship, the two planned to visit Yosemite National Park. They wanted to see how they traveled together, from their pace to overcoming travel snafus. You really learn a lot about a person when they are in a pressure cooker and when they're in a tough situation, or like when they have to think fast, or when they have to pivot, the Georgia-based resident told USA Today. He's not the only person who feels that way. with 37% of U.S. travelers open to testing a relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or professional, through a trip, according to Booking.com's 2026 travel predictions. By observing how you handle stressful flight disruptions or work together to navigate a new city, travel can make or break a relationship. Travel can be a powerful pathway to growth by pushing people to their limits, revealing how they handle stressors, and expanding their perspective. When you introduce a companion, it turns into a genuine test of compatibility. In 2026, we are expecting travelers to lean into what we are calling the turbulence test, which is all about using travel as the ultimate relationship check to see how well they really sync with the people in their lives, said Ben Harrell, managing director of the United States for Booking.com. Let's be honest, travel isn't only about where you're going anymore. It's also about discovering who you are and who's actually worth going with, since nothing tests compatibility and communication quite like a trip together. Lidwin has a similar philosophy. Some of his dream destinations are Peru and Bolivia, but he knows he can't travel there with just anyone. I know what those places will be like, the long bus rides, the insects, and the stretching nature of it, and there are a lot of people I wouldn't go with, but my wife would, he said. He learned that Sydney embodied many of the qualities he was looking for in a partner shortly after that first trip together, which he said unraveled quickly. It started with rerouted flights and missed layovers and continued with a small accident with their rental car that forced them to return to San Francisco for the night. Even though both were exhausted, she quickly came up with solutions and remained calm. He also discovered that she's a lighter packer and a faster hiker than he is, which he loves to brag about. She really showed that our idea of a good time, our idea of a good trip, and our idea of how much we want to pack into a long weekend was actually really, really pretty similar, he added. From there, the rest was history, and the two recently welcomed their first child together. Romantic bonds aren't the only type of relationships that can benefit from traveling together. Some travelers have used trips to test whether they can take the relationship to the next level, such as from work colleagues to friends. That's what travel influencer and writer La Carmina did in 2015 with photographer and friend Joey Wong. She had met Wong through a mutual friend and liked his work enough to bring him on a trip to Iceland as her photographer. Not only did they work well together, but she quickly learned they had much in common, from travel style to shared interests, like trying local cuisine. There are many important things that usually only come up on a trip when we're together at all times, like how to spend money, what type of experiences they prioritize, and their quirks and habits, she told USA Today. To this day, La Carmina and Wong remain close friends and have gone on many trips together, both for work and leisure. Bella Graham, a somatic coach and writer, also trialed a working relationship with a friend in 2022. At the time, Graham was hosting wellness events for women under her brand Muse by Midnight and exploring hiring a friend who worked as a cinematographer to capture the retreats. They took a scouting trip to Lake Como and Cinque Terre in Italy to see how he flowed, professionally, creatively, and energetically, before committing to a larger collaboration, she said. They encountered a few snags during the trip, including issues with their accommodations and stormy weather that canceled their sunset boat ride, but they overcame them seamlessly. By the end of the trip, the two found themselves closer, both as friends and creative collaborators, and worked together for several years. You can usually determine the future of a relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, or professionals, based upon observations from traveling together, Graham said. There you go. Certain gifts you won't be able to bring through TSA. Holiday travelers preparing to fly over the Christmas period should know the type of gifts the Transportation Security Administration will allow through security. The agency has laid out restrictions for wrapped gifts and festive foods travelers may be flying with. USA Today has put together a guide so passengers can be well prepared. Here's everything to know about traveling with gifts during the holidays. Wrapped gifts. TSA recommends travelers place gifts in gift bags or gift boxes with tissue paper instead of wrapping them with paper and tape, according to a news release. The agency suggests this so that if an item triggers an alarm, an officer can resolve the issue without needing to unwrap the gift. The agency also advises passengers to keep presents unwrapped in their checked bag, according to an X post. Electronic gifts can travel in carry-on luggage, but will need to be placed in a bin with nothing above or below it so the agency can X-ray items, a separate news release states. Drones can travel through security, but passengers should check with their airline for drone-specific travel policies. All types of batteries besides lithium can travel through a checkpoint. Lithium batteries with 100 watt-hours or less are okay. Loose lithium batteries are prohibited in checked bags. The Federal Aviation Administration has very specific regulations on lithium batteries. Passengers wanting to travel with them should check the FAA website. Well, what about baked goods, you say? Baked goods, such as cakes, cookies, pies, fruitcake, brownies, and other items, are permitted through security checkpoints. Other items, such as preserves, maple syrup, champagne, and eggnog, need to be packed in a checked bag as liquids are not allowed on board. The agency advises travelers to heed this tip. If you can spill it, spread it, spray it, pump it, or pour it, and it is larger than 3.4 ounces, it needs to be packed in a checked bag, a news release states. And how about prohibited items? Passengers should review the agency's list of prohibited items before traveling, just to make sure they're packing items in the correct luggage type. For example, snow globes are not allowed in carry-on luggage if they contain more than 3.4 ounces of liquid, but they can travel in checked bags. Travelers can use TSA tools, including the TSA homepage and the What Can I Bring feature, to determine what kind of luggage an item can go into. So there you have it. And now, the Orlando parks offer special visits for holidays. Don't ask me to choose between celebrating the holidays at Walt Disney World or Universal Orlando Resort. I will never forget my kids' wonder seeing the huge helium balloons in Universal's holiday parade featuring Macy's at Universal Studios Florida, or their delight as faux snow swirled around them for the first time in forever, a dozen sing-along celebration at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Both resorts can be magical, especially during the holidays. The only question is, what kind of magic do you prefer? Well, here's what to consider when deciding on your holiday destination. By sheer volume, Disney World has more holiday offerings than Universal Orlando, but they can both get you in the spirit. Some of my favorites at Disney World, including seeing Living with the Land, glimmering greenhouses aglow with holiday lights at Epcot, the way puppeteers bring merry menagerie puppets to life at Disney's Animal Kingdom, and Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas Time parade, which is exclusive to specially ticketed Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party for most of the season. My top picks for Universal Orlando are the Holiday Parade at Universal Studios Florida, the Grinchmas Holiday Spectacular show at Universal Islands of Adventure, and soaking in the festive atmosphere across the wizarding world of Harry Potter because the holidays played such a prominent role in the early books and films. Universal Epic Universe doesn't have any major holiday offerings in its first year, but there are some decorations. When deciding on your destination, you will always want to consider non-holiday offerings as well. Are you a die-hard Star Wars fan, or does someone in your family love Disney princesses? If so, you may be better off at Disney World. Did you grow up playing Super Nintendo, or do you have a Jurassic Park lover in the family? Then you may prefer Universal Orlando. You'll want to factor in the whole experience, especially for a first-time visit. No matter which resort you choose, you can still experience holidays at the others, even without park tickets. Some Disney guests make a day of going from Disney hotel to see decorations, particularly those with gingerbread displays. Disney Springs hosts free holiday entertainment and a Christmas tree stroll with Disney-themed trees. At Universal City Walk, the Red Coconut Club becomes the Green and Red Coconut Club for the season. Restaurants and lounges across the resort offer seasonal menu items. Universal hotels are also decorated, though guests don't typically hotel hop like they do at Disney. You are listening to reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, December 19th on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been me, Chet Walczyk. I'm glad you were with me. I'm glad I was with you and able to bring you some good information and help you along the way. Take care. We'll catch up with you the next time. Have a great weekend.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nancy. This is the Life section, which is Section B. And here's a story from movies. Gwyneth is back after finally saying yes to Marty. From Patrick Ryan in New York. Gwyneth Paltrow is back where she belongs, in Josh Safdie's Marty Supreme, in New York and Los Angeles, December 19th, in theaters nationwide, Christmas Day. The A-lister is both arresting and heart-rending as the fictional, fading movie star Kay Stone, who feels revitalized by a passionate fling with manic ping-pong upstart Marty Mauser, played by Timothy Chalamet. It's Paltrow's first dramatic role since 2010's Country Strong. In the 15 years since, the Oscar winner has continued to expand her wellness and lifestyle empire Goop, making a smattering of screen appearances in TV comedies, Glee, and The Politician, as well as playing Pepper Potts in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think I was disillusioned, Paltrow, age 53, says, seated with Safdie in the opulent Central Park townhouse where Marty was filmed. I was very focused on building my business. When I was in my 20s, I really worked myself into a burnout, and I wasn't always strategic about the choices I was making. I just thought, I have to say yes and keep going. She briefly stepped away from acting in the early 2000s when she had her children, Apple, age 21, and Moses, age 19, with ex-husband Chris Martin. And when she did return to Hollywood, she typically made only one film a year after launching Goop in 2008. I kept leaning out, and I think part of it was to contemplate if I really wanted to do it, or if it was something I had just thought I wanted to do, Paltrow says. I had to do a lot of reckoning. If I wanted to go back, what circumstances would it be under? For a while, she didn't really look at scripts that were sent her way. Once in a while, some things would get through and I would just say no. But when Marty came along, I was in a period when my children were leaving home. So I was in an empty nest, really reevaluating. What is my purpose? Who am I? Paltrow requires. I felt like I was thrown into a tumble dryer. I really lost orientation. At the same time, my brother, director Jake Paltrow, told me about Josh Safdie. I didn't know who he was. I was so embarrassingly out of the loop. Safdie is best known for his nerve-shredding thrillers with Adam Sandler and Uncut Gems and Robert Pattinson, Good Time. As he tells it, there was no entertaining even of a conversation with Paltrow for the first couple of years. I couldn't send a script. I couldn't get a meeting because you really were just not doing it. But Safdie, age 41, knew that he needed Paltrow to play Kay, whom he envisioned as an amalgam of old Hollywood stars Grace Kelly and Ruby Keeler. As a teen, he remembers watching Paltrow in movies such as Great Expectations and The Talented Mr. Ripley, where she had an aura of glowing, untouchable greatness that was right for this character. Eventually, at her brother's insistence, Paltrow set a meeting with Safdie at her house, and they hit it off. It was the confluence of events where I came to understand the brilliant genius that Josh is, Paltrow recalls. I came to understand who Timothy Chalamet was, which I didn't know past this sort of cultural phenomenon around him, and how gifted he was. The script was incredible, and I had no one to make dinner for. So I moved to New York and had the most extraordinary time making this film. Here's a movie review. Seyfried dusts off Sweeney in Housemaid from Brian Truitt. Sydney Sweeney might be the housemaid, but it's Amanda Seyfried's deliciously unbalanced performance that cleans it up. Based on Frida McFadden's popular novel, the psychological thriller, 3 stars, rated R in theaters, December 19th, is steamy, twisty, demented, and not exactly subtle in its aim to entertain film fans and book talk alike. Director Paul Feig's movie doesn't hit all the marks of its addictive source material, but the thing is plenty wild enough to be a holiday guilty pleasure. Millie Calloway, Sweeney, really needs a job and she'd rather not live out of her car anymore. So when she gets an interview with the wealthy Nina Winchester, Seyfried, for a live-in maid gig, it seems heaven sent. The house is to die for, even if her attic bedroom is a bit too cozy. Hunky husband, Andrew, played by Brandon Skelnar, is a nice dude. Even Nina seems pretty cool. I don't know what I'd do without you, she tells Millie sincerely. All good, right? Nope. Millie shows up for her first day and the place is a mess. It just gets worse from there, as Nina's moods bounce from adoring pal to complete psycho, mostly the latter, and Millie is bullied, belittled, and gaslit regularly by her boss. Nina's fellow mean girl moms and their nannies have plenty to say about how Andrew's too hot for his crazed wife, and the hot husband tries to help Millie out when Nina has one of her tirades, leading to some feelings between the two. Nina notices, especially when she finds Millie hanging out in her pajamas with Andrew late at night in his man cave. That and a bloody misunderstanding leads to a confrontation between the couple and their maid. Then the housemaid pulls a Gone Girl and everything flips. There's a new perspective on everything and we get to learn some dark secrets on the way to a ferocious final act. The Housemaid is a showcase for Sweeney and Seyfried, both of whom are executive producers. In screenwriter Rebecca Sonnenshine's adaptation, Millie isn't the strongest character at first. She's more the audience's surrogate in this odd family and Nina's nutty episodes, but Sweeney comes alive with a feral side in the back half. Seyfried, on the other hand, is a force of nature throughout. The Mean Girls and Mamma Mia star gives herself completely to the movie's madness, throwing food with maniacal gusto and tossing the kind of shade that would cow Regina George. Yet, as unhinged as she gets to be, there's also vulnerability and even caring in Nina's well-crafted story arc. Among the supporting roles, Michelle Morone is the Winchester's taciturn Italian groundskeeper Enzo, who has a much more important part in the book. But the movie boasts the narrative role of Nina's daughter Cece, played by Indiana L., whom Taylor Swift fans will recognize from her Willow video. And Elizabeth Perkins has a nicely chilly role as Andrew's upper crust mom, Evelyn. The Housemaid is fine counter-programming to all those goody two-shoes Hallmark Christmas movies, with a saucy love triangle, domestic instability, and a couple of women going bonkers in the best way. Streaming. Trist Fallout Tests Besties Emily and Mindy from Aaron Jensen. Spoiler alert, this story includes details from Season 5 of Emily in Paris, now streaming on Netflix. Avoid making a faux pas by watching before reading. Lily Collins had time to get used to the shocking love affair introduced in Season 5 of Emily in Paris. In the 10-episode installment, now streaming, Emily's confidant, Mindy, Ashley Park, sleeps with Emily's ex, Elfie, Lucien Laviscant, while on vacation in Rome. Their dalliance continues in Paris, and Emily finds out before the pair can tell her. It had been teased as an idea last year, as a joke, Collins says in an interview with USA Today, seated beside her on and off-screen bestie, Park. And then I heard about it, and I thought, well, I'm not going to say anything yet because it's not true. I don't want to stress anyone out. And then when I read it, I thought, wait for the phone call. And then Ashley called me. I was really shocked and thought I was being punked, Park said, and I immediately called her, not only because she's a producer and my best friend on the show. Lily was so good in supporting me, and we figured out that we really trust, and we think the audience so trusts, this deep sisterhood and friendship. I think our fear was, is this going to make them drift apart forever? Will they ever be able to recover and reconcile? Park continues, and I really do think that the way we built it, and the writers and Darren, star series creator, did as well. We get to have the audience rooting for this friendship in a way they've never been asked to, and so we're really excited. Collins wanted to ensure the conflict felt true to life and lasted longer than half an episode. It needs to live and breathe in this uncomfortability because that's what real life is, and that's how we can show the makeup at the end, she says. You cannot just have this be a quick thing because it's not, and that's the only way it will seem real and believable. Mindy and Alfie plan to tell Emily at dinner in episode 5, but before that can happen, Alfie ends things with Mindy when he learns her billionaire ex, Nico, has reemerged. Later in the episode, Emily's young co-worker, Genevieve, reveals that the two have been sleeping together. By the end of episode 6, the twosome make amends. The actors themselves agree the betrayal, while a violation of girl code isn't friendship ending. You can reconcile through anything, Park says, but if it happens again, that means that you're not listening to that person. Then that would be a cause for some drifting. I think it's all about communication, Collins says. The biggest problem is that Mindy assumes she knows what Emily's going to say, and doesn't allow Emily to speak for herself and her reaction. And Emily just would have wanted them to be happy, because she genuinely was okay with it. That may not be the case for everyone in this situation, but for this specific situation, it just highlights how important communication is. Here's another from streaming. Marvel's Wonder Man flips the script, from Brian Truitt. Marvel's new superhero wants to be Daniel Day-Lewis, not Captain America. And in Wonder Man, streaming on Disney Plus, starting January 27th, the main character is so grounded that his costume consists of a denim jacket and jeans. Loosely inspired by a nearly 60-year-old comic character, the 8-episode action comedy series puts a Marvel Cinematic Universe spin on the life of a working LA actor. From fateful auditions and on-set stress to real-life cameos that lends a meta nature to the show. USA Today has an exclusive debut of the first clip from the show. Simon Williams, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, is an aspiring movie star, desperate for his big break. When he learns that a legendary director is remaking his favorite sci-fi film from childhood, Simon figures it's his destiny. he meets fellow thespian Trevor Slattery, who also is up for a part in the high-profile production. But Simon secretly harbors extraordinary abilities that could derail his acting career before it really gets going. "We want to do a show that doesn't feel like anything else we've done," says co-creator, head writer Andrew Guest, a former Community scribe and consulting producer on Marvel's Hawkeye. He fancied a Hollywood story set in the MCU, but Wonder Man needed to appeal to non-superhero fans. One of the key challenges was establishing real stakes and viewer empathy without supervillains threatening mass destruction. "I want people to care about whether Simon gets a role," Guest adds. "How do I get you to see it through Simon's eyes that this is life or death? A thing that to most people outside of the entertainment industry is like, oh, you didn't get the role you wanted? Who cares? You're not going to go hungry. You've got a place to live. What's the problem?" But it matters that much to Simon, and I wanted the audience to feel the same. After playing the antagonist Black Manta in DC's Aquaman movies and the preternaturally powerful Dr. Manhattan in HBO's Watchmen TV series, Abdul Mateen looks forward to dipping into the Marvel Universe. "As a guy who could have a sip of water," he quips to USA Today. Simon hides his abilities in Wonder Man because powers are not exactly embraced in the MCU's version of Hollywood. And the show also digs into his past, the relationship to his Haitian family, and the pressure to succeed. There's an opportunity for some three-dimensionality, which is a treat as an actor, and I get to do the superpower stuff every once in a while, Abdul Mateen says. "I get a little bit of the best of both worlds." Wonder Man is primarily a buddy series about Simon and Trevor's blossoming bromance and how they help each other. As MCU fans already know, Oscar winner Kingsley's character is a frequently supporting player. In 2013's Iron Man 3, hired English actor Trevor starred in the role of international terrorist, the Mandarin. Trevor reprised the part in the 2014 short film All Hail the King, and last appeared alongside Simu Liu's title character in 2021's Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Trevor is this bumbling, almost Forrest Gumpy, Chauncey Gardner-type character who gets caught up in bigger picture things, Guest says. "This guy thinks he's done the hard work, thinks he's redeemed himself, but realizes in our series that he hasn't. He, for the first time ever, takes ownership over how his behavior has affected other people and decides to do something about it." Wonder Man delves into Trevor's backstory as well. When he first played the character, Kingsley had Trevor's origins in his mind, but I didn't really share it extensively because I don't want to burden my colleagues with my imaginative ramblings and how Trevor got to where he was, Kingsley tells USA Today. Working with Guest and co-creator Destin Daniel Cretton, it was so exciting to realize what was under the tip of the iceberg. The whole of Trevor's history poured out of me. For Abdul Mateen, Trevor and Simon represent two different sides of being a professional actor. Trevor's trying to recreate something, and Simon's trying to reach for something that's better than the last thing that he did. The series also visually plays homage to its main character's comic book roots. The movie that has the young version of Abdul Mateen Simon Loves in the show features a Wonder Man outfit, much like how he appeared on the page as an Avenger supervillain in 1964. And Guest included other touchstones inspired by Simon's cool style from the comics, including a 1980s vibe that throws back to Wonder Man's heyday as a founding member of the West Coast Avengers. While the MCU version isn't all do-gooder yet, Abdul Mateen feels Wonder Man takes him on a journey where he learns to be more heroic and honorable and less selfish. Who's this guy when he finally becomes a star? Abdul Mateen says. That's the guy that people know from the comic books. Who has the choice of whether to roll out of bed and go do his thing, or to reluctantly use his powers to go do some superhero stuff? You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time's 38 minutes after the hour. So now it's time for Section C, which is sports. Generational quarterback Lawrence delivering big in the AFC South. Jaguars prowling at 10-4 heading into the Broncos game. From Jarrett Bell. They've been playing NFL football for 106 years now, and no one, not even Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Roger Staubach, has ever achieved in a game what Trevor Lawrence pulled off last weekend. Do the math. Go back to the Papa Bear origins, when the league began in 1920 as the American Professional Football Association. And there's been something like 88 million games, give or take a few. Yet never until now has a player passed for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns, plus rushed for 50 yards with another touchdown in the same game. Sure, it was against the New York Jets, but it still counts. No, this doesn't mean the sizzling Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback is a generational talent fit to be cloned. Generational. That's what they called Lawrence when he came out of Clemson as the #1 pick overall in 2021, and, well, that description didn't quite work out. It turned out to be the term that symbolized the prolific overhype for Lawrence, who proceeded to take so many lumps like other human quarterbacks on the NFL learning curve. If there's a term that fits about now, just call him hot. Lawrence, age 26, is playing the best football of his professional career. The past 3 games, the lanky 6'6" thrower has tossed 9 touchdowns and for the first time has gone 3 games in a row without a turnover. And he's put up triple-digit passer ratings in 3 games in a row for the first time. Of course, it's not just Lawrence. The Jags, 10-4, have won 10 games for the first time since 2017 and ride into Denver with a 5-game winning streak. While the defense leads the league against the run and has produced more takeaways than any team besides those pesky Chicago Bears, Trevor and company have gone 7 games in a row with at least 25 points. And they're in first place in the AFC South. Who knew? When I visited the Jaguars in training camp, energetic new coach Liam Cohn, who lasted just 1 season as the Bucs offensive coordinator until some people, Shad Khan, Tony Bossell, plucked him away and handed him the keys, stood on the practice field and demonstrated to me some of the mechanics key to his agenda for Lawrence. Stuff about footwork, torque, and motion. I remember thinking, if nothing else, this dude'll get his point across. Very intentional with how he talks to the staff, the players, all of us as a team. Lawrence, named AFC Offensive Player of the Week, said during his Wednesday, December 18th press fest, "You can tell it's very directed. He knows what he wants to say and the message he wants to get across, and there's no gray area. And then I've talked about the way he expresses himself and the passion, and you can feel it coming from him. And I think that's something that guys have really latched onto. That makes guys want to follow him because you can see it. Something is clearly working. In the case of Lawrence, who previously worked with Urban Meyer and Doug Peterson, the connection with Cohn is increasingly showing up too, with the nuances for managing the game at the line of scrimmage. Cohn said, "I think he's more comfortable doing it, and we're able to attack people a little differently than maybe we were early on." Said Lawrence, "I feel like I'm seeing it really well. Guys are making plays, we're trusting each other, and it's been fun, so we should keep it rolling." The milestone game allowed fresh examples of Lawrence's growth. Now comes perhaps the stiffest test yet as Lawrence gets set for his 75th NFL start on Sunday at Empower Field. What a reward after such a banner performance. The Broncos lead the NFL with 58 sacks, on pace to threaten the NFL record, 72, set by the magnificent 1985 Bears. This underscores just how much of a hunted man Lawrence will be amid all of that noise and altitude in the mile-high city. Jacksonville, though, comes off back-to-back games without allowing a sack and has had an NFL-high 5 sackless games this season. That protection, too, is about to get a major litmus test. It's not just the group up front. It's the whole defense, every level, Lawrence said of Denver's unit. Lawrence hasn't played much meaningful football this time of year since arriving in the NFL. He won a playoff game under Peterson in his second season, but last year the Jags finished 4-13. His rookie year, they were 3-14. Now the division title is in sight, with the Jags engaged in a three-way battle with the Texans, who are 9-5, and the Colts, 8-6. Meanwhile, the Broncos, 12-2, are carrying an NFL best 11 game winning streak while trying to nail down the AFC West crown and number 1 AFC seed. "Yep, it's a big game," Lawrence said. "When you put yourself in a position like we have, and obviously like the Broncos have, every game is huge at the end of the year, which is where you want to be. Survive Denver, and maybe another term will apply for Lawrence. Street cred." Miami versus Texas A&M. Assessing strengths, weaknesses, and playoff matchup, from Cameron Amnesty. Texas A&M is a day away from hosting Miami in what is considered the best matchup during the first round of the college football playoff. Both teams are highly similar on both sides of the ball, while starting quarterbacks, Marcus Reed of A&M and Carson Beck of Miami, threw for 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions during the regular season. For what could be the final time this season, comparing the key stats heading into the matchup Saturday, December 20th, provides more clarity for both fan bases who may not have watched either team this year. When I said these teams performed similarly, I wasn't kidding. Entering the game, Texas A&M is a slight 3-point favorite, mainly due to playing it in what should be a sold-out Kyle Field. Still, the Aggies are coming off a devastating 27-7 road loss to rival Texas less than a month ago, while starting Reed played what many consider the worst game of his career. However, Texas A&M's offense is expected to get star running back Levon Moss back on the field after he missed the past 5 games and still finished with the 19th ranked offense, even with the senior sideline for the second half of the regular season. Under center, Reed has had the luxury of throwing to wide receivers Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver, who combined for over 1,700 yards and 13 touchdowns. At the same time, Miami quarterback Carson Beck has relied on elite freshman wideout Malachi Toney for most of the passing production at the end of the regular season. On the ground, Texas A&M averaged nearly 200 yards rushing. In comparison, the Hurricanes finished with 150 yards per contest, which is respectable but shouldn't strike fear into Texas A&M's defensive line and linebacker rotation. Still, the Aggies haven't been the most efficient run defense, allowing too many explosive plays before adjusting in the second half. Outside of limiting turnovers and forcing the Hurricanes into third and long situations against Texas A&M's number one third down defense, the Aggies will look to produce several explosive plays, primarily through the air. They will be facing a Miami secondary that finished 17th in explosive play defense. The bottom line is that limiting Toney and forcing Beck to drop back on nearly every snap is key to Texas A&M's defense, limiting the Hurricanes from reaching the end zone and forcing them to rely on field goals. For the Aggies, offensive coordinator Colin Klein will need to scheme up high percentage plays for Reed to get the ball out quickly on screens and mesh concepts. And A&M will likely need to rely on extended drives with a balanced rushing attack. Texas A&M, 11-2, 7-1 SEC, will host Miami, 0-2, 6-2 ACC, at noon Saturday with broadcast coverage on ABC and ESPN. Golf Channel games show pros can play faster, from Cameron Jordan. The Golf Channel games are in the books, and it's safe to say the inaugural edition was a success. Scottie Scheffler defeated Rory McIlroy in a playoff, a roughly 50-yard chip shot that Scheffler hit 2 inches closer than McIlroy, to win the competition Wednesday, December 17th. The event was golf's version of the NBA All-Star Game, a made-for-TV event with different competitions like speed golf, a 14-club challenge, and more, with the top 2 players in the world, the faces of their teams. "We tried something new," McIlroy said, "and sometimes when you try something new, it doesn't work out. But I think this one really did. I think the biggest thing is all the players were into it. It was fun. It was a different format. A lot more interaction between the players as opposed to traditional golf. So yeah, overall, it was awesome, right?" As mentioned, one of the competitions, all of which featured a timer, was a team relay with players stationed on the tee box, fairway, and green, trying to complete a hole as quickly as they could. On one par 4, McIlroy's team made a birdie in 28 seconds, with Luke Donald hitting the tee shot, McIlroy hitting the approach, and Lowry sinking a short birdie putt. And one thing stood out from this sequence. Pro golfers can play fast and play well. This isn't the only takeaway from the night, but pace of play is a conversation that hovers over the entirety of professional golf, whether men's or women's, and is in a constant topic from the tournaments in January to the major championships over the summer. And the Golf Channel games is about as far removed from competitive golf as you can be for the best players in the world. But it showed they can still hit incredible shots with essentially zero time to prepare for them. McIlroy's approach shot is particularly striking for this argument. After Donald hits the tee shot, the ball is at rest for less than 2 seconds before McIlroy hits it. In one motion, he gets set and begins his swing. The time between Donald hitting the golf ball and McIlroy doing so in the fairway was only 8 seconds. That's an eternity in bull riding. In golf, only Ludwig Eberg dreams of hitting a golf shot that quickly. Not only does he hit the shot as quickly as possibly, McIlroy hit it brilliantly to inside of 10 feet, with Lowry having to wait for the ball to stop moving before knocking in the birdie. Look, From tee shot to the ball dropping in the cup, it took 28 seconds to complete the hole. Now, asking for a pro golfer to complete a hole in 28 seconds on their own is absurd to even think about. But seeing how quickly McIlroy hits the approach shot just raises the question as to why golfers take so long to hit shots. The Golf Channel Games is not the Masters, the Players, or let alone the 3M Open. There's a lot of money on the line in professional golf events. The difference in one shot can be hundreds of thousands of dollars for some, and even job security for others. There's also weather to factor in, different conditions based on where the ball is at, whether that's the fairway, rough, or sand trap. And there are other pros players have to wait on to play their own shots. But if McIlroy can step up and hit a shot that quickly and that good, why can't professional golfers play more quickly during tournament rounds? Recent efforts have been made to expedite play on both the PGA Tour and LPGA, although there are still numerous instances throughout the year where slow play becomes so severe that it sparks controversy on social media. Some players are notorious for their slow play, especially golfers who aim point a 2-foot putt. It's glorified when they're in contention on golf's biggest stages. How fast is too fast? Surely every single player can shave time off of their routines. So much data and information go into hitting a golf shot. Players want to be as prepared as they can be to make a stroke, and as is mentioned, it's important to take every shot just as serious as the previous one, and as the ones to come. But perhaps all of this mental gymnastics is more detrimental than it is beneficial. Players can only go so fast, too, with tee times normally spread out over 2 hours during a 2-tee start at events, so the lead group can only go so fast as not to have to wait after making the turn. But if the overall pace of play were to pick up, the gap between tee times could be decreased in an effort to get players on and off the course quickly. At the end of the day, professional golf is a business where thousands are trying to make a living, make history, or grind it out for another shot at glory. The time and effort that goes into making a single shot on the PGA Tour, LPGA, or the developmental tours can be the difference in thousands of dollars or job security. It's insane to think anyone can play as quickly as the number 2 player in the world did in a timed competition where he was waiting for a tee shot in the fairway. But without a doubt shows that players can play faster. Maybe it's actually time to police slow play instead of giving it a slap on the wrist when infractions do occur. Here's a commentary. With Nemesis eliminated, Bills can see a Super Bowl 60 path. From Jarrett Bell. Maybe the stars are aligning for the Buffalo Bills. Go ahead. Tell me how a team, and one with a suspect 30th ranked run defense, can rally from a 21-0 deficit on the road to beat an opponent that was seemingly on the verge of breaking out division title swag. And this, a week after overcoming a 10-point fourth quarter hole. We know the Bills are plenty resilient. Insert Chris Berman soundbite here. No one circles the wagon like. The Bills have had 4 games this season where they allowed at least 30 points. And guess what? They won all 4 of those games. With Josh Allen or not, that's seriously living right. Yet the Bills, 10-4, also received quite the bonus attached to their latest triumph, the 35-31 thriller at New England. The Kansas City Chiefs were eliminated from the playoffs. No, that hasn't happened in a decade. You could set your clock to Patrick Mahomes, bless him, making a run at another Super Bowl. But not now. Now the Bills Mafia can really look to the stars. The witch is dead, but will the Bills travel the yellow brick road? The Chiefs have been some kind of boogeyman to Buffalo's long-suffering vision of finally winning a Lombardi trophy. They were like Freddy Krueger. Jason and Chucky all rolled into one when it came to Buffalo's Super Bowl-seeking nightmare. It's no wonder that the Bills knew better than to get giddy after they battered Mahomes and blasted Kansas City in November at Highmark Stadium. No big deal. They have repeatedly proved able, 5 times since 2020 to be exact, to handle Mahomes and company in regular season showdowns. It's that beating the Chiefs in January has been the issue, with Buffalo getting knocked out of the playoffs by that dreadful rival 4 times since 2020. But it can't happen this time because the witch is dead. Hey, who knows what will actually go down on the yellow brick road of the playoffs? It has the potential to be wide open, like something cooked up by the ghost of Pete Rozelle, father of NFL parody. Aaron Rodgers might be in the mix. Phillip Rivers? Never say never. Sean Payton and the magnificent Denver Broncos defense will surely have a say. One glance at the dizzying lineup of playoff-clinching scenarios on tap for Week 16 emphasizes the range of possibilities. 9 teams can clinch playoff berths this week, and the Broncos can even lock up a number 1 seed and home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs by defeating the Jags, while 3 other things happen. The Chargers lose or tie, the Patriots lose, the Bills lose or tie, if. Yet one thing is certain, the Chiefs will not end Buffalo's season again. Without Chiefs roadblock, a path clears for Buffalo. Maybe. The Bills had a chance to advance to their first Super Bowl since the 1990s, hello Bruce Smith and Jim Kelly, if only they could have pulled off a last-minute rally in the AFC Championship game at Kansas City in January. But it ended with a 32-29 loss, as Dalton Kincaid couldn't make what would have been a difficult catch of Allen's 4th down throw. The setback came with the officiating controversy of a spot and a scum. Previous heartbreak moments, including the 44-yard field goal try by Tyler Bass that sailed wide right. How cruel, given Scott Norwood's miss at the end of Super Bowl 25 to seal a 3-point loss in the 2023 AFC Divisional Playoff at Buffalo. Before that, the Bills were victimized in the 2021 divisional round when Mahomes needed just 13 seconds to engineer a field goal drive that forced overtime with Harrison Butker's 49-yard kick. Then the Chiefs won the coin toss and promptly produced a 75-yard drive, capped by Mahomes' 8-yard touchdown pass to Travis Kelce. Sorry, Buffalo, it wasn't until after that episode that the NFL changed the overtime rules, allowing for both teams to at least touch the ball. Enough of such details. The Bills in current form need not to rehash the pain. After all, with the Chiefs out of the way, there's a clearer view of the stars that seem to be aligning in the so-called Super Bowl window for the Bills. Maybe. On top of the past 2 comeback victories, the Bills won a 44-32 shootout against the Bucs in Week 11, when the lead changed 9 times. They beat the Ravens in the season opener, despite trailing by 15 points with 5 minutes to play. And the way they pummeled Pittsburgh, rushing for a James Cook-powered 249 yards, left track marks on the Steelers' defense. You can't blame Buffalo for feeling that this season, the final one in their rickety stadium in Orchard Park, will be something special. Still, even with the Chiefs finished, they are warned. The Bills can't expect to keep pulling out inspired inspiring comebacks when the competition rises to another level in the playoffs. Obviously, we want to start faster. Allen, the reigning NFL MVP, said after the win at Foxborough on December 14th. We don't want to continue to find ourselves in these holes that we're finding ourselves in. It's a good thing to be battle-tested coming down the stretch, as Allen went on to describe it. I'd love to find ways earlier on in the game to get things going, he added, so we don't have to put ourselves in that situation. At least there's one situation, facing Kansas City in the playoffs, that the Bills can thank their lucky stars that they don't have to worry about this time. "68 Ventures Win Caps Delaware's FBS Debut" by Kevin Trelzini. Having a winning record in its inaugural Football Bowl subdivision season would have been viewed as an epic accomplishment for Delaware. The fact the Blue Hens achieved that with an actual bowl victory put a permanent positive stamp in their 2025 FBS debut on December 17th at Hancock Whitey Stadium. With a national ESPN audience tuned in, Delaware hardly looked like an FBS yearling against Louisiana team making its 8th consecutive bowl appearance. Delaware never trailed in the 68 Ventures Bowl and took command with a 70-yard scoring drive to start the third quarter, comprised of 6 pass plays. The Blue Hens then endured an excruciating ending, thwarting 2 late Louisiana possessions, and were rewarded with a 20-13 win over the Ragin' Cajuns, and the 7-6 record that goes with it. It came down to an incomplete pass in the end zone from the Delaware 7-yard line as time ran out, with the Blue Hens then launching into an avid celebration. Sunbelt Conference members, Louisiana, which was plagued by failed opportunities and turnovers, finished 6-7. Delaware and Conference USA rival Missouri State were just the 3rd and 4th schools since 2012 to reach a bowl game in their first FBS seasons. League rival Jacksonville State is the only one to previously get a win, that coming in the 2023 New Orleans Bowl. This was something that obviously had its doubters. There's no doubt this move to FBS football, Coach Ryan Carty said. It's pretty special. Joe Silver's 61-yard scoring dash on Delaware's second series set the tone. He finished with 116 yards on 14 carries, an important contribution from the Hens' ground game. Quarterback Nick Minicucci, after throwing for just 50 first-half yards, finished 19 for 30 for 176 yards with a 35-yard touchdown to Sean Wilson to start the third quarter, as Delaware eventually went up 20-3. We have done some astonishing things this year, Minucci said. Knowing the bowl win was the crowning achievement. ODU Monarchs reign in Cure Bowl from Eshin Kassim. Old Dominion football ended its 2025 season emphatically. Behind a 100-yard rushing performance from quarterback Quinn Hennicle and a 5-turnover performance from its defense, the Monarchs defeated South Florida 24-10 in the Cure Bowl on December 17th at Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida. In just his second career start, Hennicle struggled as a passer, going 11 of 25 for 127 yards, but he dominated on the ground with 24 rushes for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. He picked up a 51-yard touchdown with just over 2 minutes remaining to ice the 10th win of the season for ODU. Hennicle earned the start after starting quarterback Colton Joseph announced his intention to transfer. USF, without its own starting quarterback, Byron Brown, and head coach Alex Gorlish, who is headed to Auburn, struggled to run the ball and turn the ball over 5 times against the Old Dominion defense. The Bulls, 9-4, finished with 35 rushes for 52 yards, averaging 101.5 yards per carry, with a long run of 12 yards. They also turned the ball over 5 times, including throwing 4 interceptions and losing a fumble. 2 of the 3 losses for ODU this season came against teams in the college football playoff field, Indiana and James Madison. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for December 19th. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Nancy.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 4 of You Belong Here by Megan Miranda. Following that, at 3 o'clock is the New York Magazine. At 4 o'clock, a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio Reading serves people who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. From its broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga, just north of Clinton Street. Almost 40 years and more than 300,000 hours of radio readings to those unable to read printed matter on their own. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings of newspapers, magazines, and books. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555. Are you facing challenges with vision loss and need help with your smartphone, sending emails, navigating the internet, and staying connected with your family? VIA, Visually Impaired Advancement, is offering free classes for seniors weekly at multiple locations with free assistance for your smartphone, email, and internet skills. There's a new session every week, and it rotates between the South Towns and the North Towns. It's at your local Erie County libraries and at 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. For more information, call Elhana Porter at 716-888-4632. Again, that's 716-888-4632. You're listening to your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, books, and other printed matter. People who are blind or have a print disability throughout Western New York and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula are provided special reading radios. This year, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service marks almost 40 years on the air. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Service studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service website is nfradioreading.org. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555.